The movie begins with a boy named Tim waiting in the hospital to visit his father. A nurse called him, telling him his father had woken and he wanted to see him. His father is gravely ill and has only a short time left to live. Tim got inside and gave him a headset so that he would listen to music there. Tim's father, a passionate musician, expresses his dying wish for Tim to follow in his footsteps and become a musician, believing deeply in the power of music to give a person everything they need: joy, purpose, and connection.
That's incredible.
He hopes his son will embrace the same love for music that defined his own life. He gave Tim a book as a gift. As they talked, the nurse came and told him that he needed his rest. Before Tim left, his father held his hands and made him promise that he would go to Austria to pursue his dreams and learn. Tim reassured him he would and left.
It will change your life.
After his father's death a few months later, Tim decides to honor that wish and leaves for Austria, where a prestigious music school awaits him. Because of his father's legacy and reputation in the music world, Tim is able to secure admission with relative ease. On the train journey to Austria, he started reading the book that was given to him by his father. He then turned to see a girl looking at him. They smiled at each other and went to a private wagon. The girl introduced her name, Sophie.
I'm Sophie, by the way.
She is also on her way to the same music school. Sophie, like Tim, dreams of becoming a musician, and the two quickly bond over their shared aspirations. She asked what he was going to learn, and he mentioned that he plays the piano, and on top of that, he can also sing. She mocked him about it, and they both sat next to each other. As the train moves through the countryside, they both fall asleep to the sound of music playing softly.
More like Jackson 5.
When Tim awakened, he was sitting alone and was already in Austria. He rushed to get out of the train and carried his luggage to the school, Mozart International School. When he gets in, a man leads him to the principal office. He walked into the principal's office, Dr. Longbow. As soon as he walked in, Dr. Longbow started by sharing a quote from Pierre-Simon Marquis de Laplace, explaining that the present state of the universe is shaped by its past and will shape its future. He mentioned Laplace's idea that if someone knew the exact position and movement of every atom, they could predict what would happen next.
Thank you, sir.
He added that this idea applies to people as well as atoms. When he noticed Tim wasn't paying attention, Dr. Longbow told him to sit down and reminded him that Mozart's Academy doesn't give special treatment to students. He explained that the school rarely accepts late admissions, but they made an exception for Tim because of his situation. He offered his condolences and mentioned he had heard Tim's father sing many times in the past. He praised Tim's father as a talented singer, especially in his performance of Figaro, but stressed that true greatness comes from discipline and following rules.
My condolences, Mr. Walker.
Finally, Dr. Longbow brought up the upcoming Christmas recital featuring the Magic Flute. Tim mentioned that it had been his father's favorite opera because he felt a deep connection to the character of Prince Tamino. As their conversation continued, Mr. Baumgartner entered the room. Dr. Longbow introduced him to Tim, explaining that Mr. Baumgartner would be his teacher.
I'm your new teacher.
Dr. Longbow then asked Mr. Baumgartner to show Tim to his room. On their way, Mr. Baumgartner commented on Tim's timing, noting that his arrival was late enough to grab attention, but still early enough to participate in auditions. He mentioned that the roles for the upcoming performances had not yet been assigned. He encouraged Tim by saying that for someone passionate about music, there was no better place than Mozart's Academy. He described the school as a place filled with a unique sense of magic. With that, they continued walking.
There is a real magic in this waltz.
Inside, Tim meets his roommate, a boy who clearly resents his arrival. The roommate, who had grown accustomed to living alone, seems dissatisfied to now share his space. Tim asked how he was lucky enough to not have a roommate. His roommate, Paolo, told him that his old roommate left school and asked why he was late to arrive.
You can take the one in the corner if you must.
Tim shared his story about his father and finally warms up to Tim. Later, Paolo offers to take Tim on a tour of the school, pointing out its key areas and explaining the daily routines. While exploring, an incident disrupts the calm. Another boy suddenly appears and starts bullying Paolo, pushing him and speaking harshly. Afterward, Paolo pulls Tim aside and warns him to stay away from the bully, saying he isn't worth Tim's attention. Tim, confused by the tension, listens as Paolo opens up. He explains that the bully is the son of a famous singer, which gives him power and protection. No one dares to challenge him. And though Paolo feels deeply frustrated, he believes there's nothing he can do to change the situation. The following day, the entire school gathers in the assembly hall. Mr. Longbow stands before the students and formally introduces Tim as the newest member of the music school. Without warning, Mr. Longbow turns to Tim and instructs him to sing a song for everyone.
Presenting your voice, son.
Shocked and unprepared, Tim freezes, unsure of what to do. Mr. Longbow, however, dismisses his hesitation. With a smirk, he remarks that preparation isn't necessary for singing. A musician should be able to use their voice naturally. He goes on to add, somewhat condescendingly, that a great musician isn't always a great singer, so Tim need not worry or overthink it.
Exactly, you don't know.
Tim stands nervously in front of the entire school and begins to sing. The song turns out to be beautiful, touching the hearts of many students. However, Mr. Longbow is unimpressed. With a stern expression, he criticizes Tim harshly, claiming that the song goes against the school's principles and expectations. Later that night, unable to sleep, Tim picks up a book titled The Magic Flute, a story that mirrors the classic tales of princes and princesses, where a brave prince must save a princess from danger. As he turns the pages, a strange light catches his eye.
Come.
Curious, Tim puts the book down and follows the glow, which seems to guide him out of his room and through the silent halls of the school. Meanwhile, the bullies got into Tim's room but got angry when they couldn't find him. One of them, Anton, angrily confronted Paolo, saying that he warned him, but Paolo has no idea they even still do this. He calmly told Anton that Tim was there when he slept.
He was here and I fell asleep.
And Anton stormed out of the room. Tim soon finds himself standing before the library, where the light flickers and pulses. Inside, he notices a peculiar empty slot on a bookshelf, as though a book is missing. Acting on instinct, Tim places the magic flute book into the empty space. Suddenly, the room shifts. A hidden passage opens before him, revealing a swirling corridor filled with vibrant, colorful orbs of light that float and spiral around him. Tim asked what they were,
What do I have to do?
and the lights were there to help him. As he steps forward, a voice, soft yet powerful, fills the air. It tells Tim that if he wishes to enter the magical world, he must become a part of a story. The voice explains that his path will not be easy. He will face great dangers, and only by confronting them can he move forward. They also warned him that he couldn't tell this to anyone. If he chooses not to, he can simply remain at the school, leaving the magical adventure behind. Tim hesitates for a moment.
There are 3 things to keep in mind.
The weight of the decision heavy on his mind. The dazzling lights of the magical world beckon to him, promising mystery and purpose, while the memory of his father's wish echoes in his heart. The lights pressured him, telling Tim he had to make a choice, and he chose the magical world. The moment he shared his decision with the glowing orbs of light, everything around him shifted. In an instant, Tim found himself transported to a strange, otherworldly place. The land stretched endlessly into a vast desert.
Your decision, please.
With an eerie silence that seemed to hum with hidden magic, he looked around, but there was no one around. He then began walking, unsure of where he was or what lay ahead. Suddenly, a massive snake slithered out from the sand, blocking his path and preparing to strike. Tim froze in fear, but managed to scramble out of its reach just in time. Tim started running, but the snake followed him. He managed to get into a cave and hide there, but the narrow entrance stopped the snake from getting in. Tim remembered that music was a central theme in the story he had read, so in desperation, he began to sing a song, hoping the music would have some effect on the creature. To his dismay, the snake was unmoved by his voice. Realizing the danger, Tim turned and fled, running as fast as his legs could carry him. The uneven ground made his escape even more treacherous, and as he ran, his foot slipped. He tumbled hard to the ground, losing consciousness as the massive snake loomed over him. While Tim lay on the ground unconscious, a woman appeared in front of him. She then raised her hands and soon the snake collapsed. Another two women came and dragged Tim away from the dangerous den, walking until they reached a safer area. Once there, they argued about who was going to stay with Tim, but then all three disappeared. When Tim awoke, the danger was gone. Shortly after, a man appeared, one who wandered the desert, catching birds for the king. He noticed Tim and approached him cautiously.
What are you doing back there?
When Tim opened his eyes and saw the man, he felt a wave of relief, thinking that this stranger had saved his life. The bird catcher, Papa Jano, on the other hand, was puzzled but intrigued. Taking note of Tim's unusual clothes and demeanor, he mistakenly assumed that Tim must be a prince. Tim started to tell him that he was not, but seeing the lights giggling, he decided to go along with it. Tim thanked him for saving him. Papa Jano got confused, and seeing the snake's enormous size, he was startled, but to use it for his own advantage, he pretended that he was indeed the one he saved. Papa Jano, in an odd request, demands that Tim give him a title as a reward. Before Tim can respond, the three magician women reappear. Overhearing the conversation, Papa Jano started talking about the birds he caught, but they stopped him.
Enough.
Papa Jano kept talking about his wages. Annoyed by his behavior, the magicians cast a quick spell, sealing his mouth shut. Papa Jano's eyes widen in shock as he tries to speak, but can no longer utter a word. They asked Tim who he was, and he told them that he was Prince Tamino. Hearing this, they approached Tim with a mix of awe and excitement, declaring that he is the prince they have been waiting for all these years. They insist that Tim must meet their queen immediately because there is something that she wants him to see. The magicians used magic to make an image of a young girl appear on one of the rocks. Tim looked at it in awe, and seeing his distraction, the magicians mentioned that maybe they should find another person, but Tim told them he was fine and they kept walking. The magicians escorted Tim to the queen, a powerful sorceress who reveals the reason she has been waiting for him.
Is that a problem?
She explains that her daughter has been taken by a dangerous man, a soldier who serves the king of the nearby city. With sadness and urgency in her voice, the queen pleads for Tim's help, reminding him of his role as the prince. She tells him that it is his duty to rescue her daughter and restore peace. Tim, still uncertain but determined to help, agrees to the quest. Upon hearing this, the queen smiled and informed him that he had been chosen to defend her. She emphasized the need for him to hasten to her side without delay. The queen added that once his efforts were crowned with success, he would be granted the honor of taking her as his bride. Her words were filled with promise and assurance, repeating the sentiment to underscore its importance. Papa Jano called Tim alone and asked him to help him with lifting the magic that shut his mouth, but Tim was confused on how to help him. The magicians then finally lifted their magic, and Papa Jano was able to talk again. The magician gives him a magic flute and explains that the flute possesses magical properties and will guide and protect him on his journey, helping him through any trouble he may face. With newfound resolve and his magical tool in hand,
I didn't kill the snake.
Tim prepares to begin the dangerous journey to confront the soldier and rescue the queen's daughter. Tim and Papa Jano walked out. Papa Jano told Tim that he didn't kill the snake and walked away. Tim followed him, and the lights that brought him kept giggling around him. Tim then started to hear a ticking sound. He asked Papa Jano if he was also hearing the sound, but Papa Jano assumed Tim was going crazy. Then suddenly, Tim was dragged from the magical world. He finds himself back in the real world, standing once more in the familiar library. He then realized the ticking sound he was hearing was of the clock. The book still rests in its place, glowing faintly, as if marking the connection between the two worlds. He then saw the magic flute on the ground next to him. Confused but determined, Tim realizes that the journey is far from over. There will be a time to return to the magical world and complete the task he has accepted.
Hey, what's happening?
When he walked out of the library, he encountered Paolo, who asked where he was during the night. Tim told him he couldn't sleep, and Paolo congratulated him in his perfect timing because he missed Anton's welcoming party. He then told him to meet him out in the front after his last class and left. At night, Paolo took Tim to a place where other students had gathered around a fire. Tim spotted Sophie with her friend. Her friend, Olivia, rushed to them and introduced herself. Tim asked Sophie why she disappeared in in the train last time, and she told him that she was in a hurry, and she couldn't bring herself to wake him up because he looked peaceful. Olivia and Paolo walked off toward the fire, leaving Tim and Sophie to chat in private. Tim brought up the song he had performed on his first day, mentioning he sang Bocelli, which was always a crowd pleaser back home. Sophie joked that at this school, Bocelli might as well be pop music. Sophie continued, teasing that her plan to sing Adele next week probably wouldn't impress their teacher, old Longbow, either.
You should take a chance.
Sophie then mentioned she had heard people talking about his voice, saying it was beautiful. She quickly clarified that she wasn't digging for information. It was just what people said in their small school community. Tim thanked her, and Sophie offered some unsolicited advice, encouraging him to take risks and step out of his comfort zone if he wanted to grow. Tim, with a smirk, joked back, asking why he thought she was missing anything in the first place. The next day, Tim went back to the library and placed the book on the empty spot. When nothing happened, he started playing the magic flute, but everything remained the same. He then realized he couldn't return to the magical world until the next night. He kept his adventure a secret and focused on his musical classes during the day. Mr. Baumgartner was teaching the first class of the day.
Does anyone know how to get to Carnegie Hall?
When the lesson ended, the students filed out, except for Tim, who stayed behind to ask a question. He approached the teacher and hesitantly inquired about the meaning behind the Masonic symbols they had been discussing. Mr. Baumgartner welcomed the question, and Tim handed him his book, and the teacher admired it, noting the edition's quality. To explain, he started with the basics, pointing out that the symbols were rooted in the number 3. He explained how even the phrase in the opera was composed of 3 chords in E-flat major, which meant 3 flats. Continuing, he elaborated that the Masons valued truth over ignorance, with their temples symbolizing nature, reason, and wisdom, another reference to the number 3. He further highlighted the recurrence of this symbolism in the opera, with 3 spirits, 3 ladies, and 3 trials.
What do they all mean, exactly?
Before Tim left, the teacher checked the time and dismissed him with a nod, leaving Tim to reflect on the layered meanings. When night fell, Tim woke up to his alarm. He got to go to the library, but was startled to see Paolo awake. Tim asked what he was doing, and Paolo told him he was writing a letter. Tim was surprised by the timing, but Paolo insisted that the greatest letters are written at this hour. After a brief conversation, Tim went out to go to the library. He reached the library with the same quiet anticipation. He placed the magic flute back in its spot. Immediately, the magical world surrounded him once again, and he found himself back in the story he had left behind. He called for Papageno, and the same 3 lights appeared, encircling him. They addressed him directly, explaining that since he hadn't been present earlier, Papageno had already gone ahead. They urged him to follow quickly. He asked if Papageno was likely on the path to Sarastro's palace. Their words confirmed what he had been wondering about all along.
Eternal night is coming.
In the magical realm, the soldier who had kidnapped the queen's daughter continued to treat her cruelly, forcing her to work as his captive. Meanwhile, Papageno had reached their hideout and reassured her that the queen had sent him with the prince to rescue her. He then unlocked her chains and the 2 escaped. As they fled through a crowded market, the princess and Papageno ran into Tim on the path. Relieved to see each other, the 3 of them hurried away, determined to get the queen's daughter to safety. However, their escape was cut short when the kidnapper appeared with his companions, surrounding them on all sides. The situation seemed hopeless as the soldiers closed in, their weapons drawn. In this moment of peril, Tim told Papageno to play the music box that was given to him by the 3 magicians. Papageno acted quickly. Using the enchanted music box, he started playing a song. Its music resonated through the air, sending out a magical force that overwhelmed the soldiers. The soldiers couldn't control themselves, and they started dancing till they were not able to. After a continuous dance, they collapsed, tired. Just then, the king of the realm arrived with his entourage. All those present, including the soldiers, bowed respectfully before him. The king surveyed the scene and sternly demanded to know what was happening. Stepping forward, the queen's daughter bravely addressed the king. She revealed that his soldier had kidnapped her, forcing her into slavery.
What is this?
and that Tim and his companion had come to her rescue. The king listened carefully, his gaze shifting between the trembling soldiers and the resolute Tim. It became clear to him that the truth lay with the princess, and the soldiers' treachery could not be ignored. Hearing the queen's daughter's account, the king grew furious with his treacherous soldier. However, rather than resolving the matter outright, the king declared that the princess would now have to prove herself through a series of tests to earn her freedom. On the king's command, his soldiers blindfolded Tim and his companion.
Wait, guys, I'm here.
Covering their faces with cloth to prepare them for the next trial. But just as the cloth touched Tim's face, something strange happened. His time in the magical world ran out. He started hearing the ticking sound of the clock, and Tim was abruptly pulled back into the real world, reappearing in the library. Back at the school, Tim attended his class. Anton started sending drawings and his own letters to Paolo. Paolo, frustrated, got up to leave the class. Tim, confused, asked the boy who was sitting next to him who the boy in the drawing was. The boy told him that was Benjamin, Paolo's old roommate. Tim followed Paolo to their room and asked him what was bothering him. Paolo opened up, saying he had always wanted to be a musician, and getting accepted into the school felt like his dream coming true. But instead, it had been a nightmare. He shared how people always criticized him, saying he was too fat or too different. It wasn't just a few people like Anton. It felt like everyone, and he didn't fit in.
Everything just pushed him too far.
Paolo then talked about Benjamin, someone he had become close to. Benjamin was like him, an outsider, and even though the teasing didn't stop, having Benjamin made it easier. They became like brothers. But one day, Benjamin couldn't take it anymore, and he was gone. At first, Paolo blamed the school and the people, thinking they had pushed Benjamin too far. Tim told Paolo he was sorry for what happened. Paolo dismissed it, asking if Tim really meant it. He said he had wanted to tell Tim about Benjamin before, to share something important, but Tim had walked away. Paolo then told Tim that they were just roommates, not friends, and went out. Anton was called to Longbow's office. He immediately apologized, saying he was sorry for passing notes around and promised not to do it again. However, Longbow made it clear that the meeting wasn't about that. Instead, he asked Anton why he was at Mozart's.
Why are you at Mozart's?
Anton hesitated before replying, mentioning the future. Longbow agreed, saying Anton had the world at his feet. He pointed out that Anton was not only talented, but also had an advantage many others would envy: his name. When Anton acknowledged this, Longbow encouraged him to keep working, explaining that the Milanese name could open doors for him as a singer. Anton, however, admitted he didn't want to be a singer. He even thought Longbow had called him in to blame him for Benjamin's death. Longbow dismissed that idea, stating it was Anton's life to lead. But he also warned that, as the son of a singer, trying anything else could lead to a mediocre future. Frustrated and angry, Anton stormed out of the office, leaving the conversation unresolved. Paolo saw Anton storming out and followed him out. He then heard someone screaming in the dark and went to see Anton on the ground, his legs stuck under branches. When he approached, Anton saw and got angry that it was Paolo.
Why you?
Meanwhile, Sophie came looking for Tim. She broke the rules by entering the boys' dormitory, something strictly forbidden. He prepared to sing for her, and he decided to use the piano. She joined him and sat next to him, and they started to sing together. Paolo helped Anton get out of the bush he was in and took him inside. He then shared a candy bar with him, and they sat together enjoying the candy bar. Anton smiled, thankful for the gesture. He then apologized for passing the letters in class. Anton opened up, saying that he was trying to make himself better about Benjamin's death by joking about it. Paolo reassured him, saying that Benjamin had a lot going on and that pushed him to the edge. Tim and Sophie sat talking, and as they were about to kiss, the clock announced that it was midnight, the time to his gateway back to the magical world. Without offering an explanation, he left Sophie standing there, confused and hurt as he rushed to the library. Once again, Tim placed the book back into its slot and was pulled into the magical world.
Then what?
This time, when he arrived, the atmosphere was tense. The queen's daughter was nowhere to be found, and Papa Jano was standing with a bag over his head. Tim, concerned, approached the king. He explained to the king that he had been late in returning, but the king shook his head and told him it wasn't about being late. The king declared that Tim must now pass a test to prove his worthiness if he wanted to save the queen's daughter. Tim and Papa Jano were led to a special place surrounded by the king's soldiers. The challenge was clear. They had to remain completely silent for an undetermined amount of time. Failure to stay silent would cost Tim his chance to rescue the princess. Meanwhile, the queen's daughter had once again been captured by the treacherous soldier. In a distant chamber, her mother appeared, confronting her daughter. She demanded answers, asking why the prince she had sent to rescue her hadn't succeeded and why her daughter hadn't done her part. The
What has become of the young man I sent?
princess, filled with sorrow and frustration, could only wonder what had gone wrong and whether Tim would be able to complete his quest in time to save her. At this point, the queen's true nature is revealed. She was a cunning and manipulative woman all along. She had sent her daughter to the king, not to be rescued, but to kill him. The queen's real plan was to secure her immortality by eliminating the king, using her own daughter as a pawn in her scheme. Coldly, the queen confesses all of this to her daughter before leaving to put her plan into motion. Unbeknownst to the queen, the soldier who had been guarding the princess overhears the entire conversation. Alarmed, he rushes to warn the king that his life is in danger. The king, deeply troubled, seeks out the queen's daughter to confront her. Distraught and ashamed, the princess finally tells the king the truth, exposing her mother's betrayal.
Your servant speaks the truth.
With her secret revealed, she begins searching for Tim, hoping he might still help undo the damage caused by her mother. Meanwhile, Tim finds the princess looking for him, but because he is still under the king's order to remain silent, he cannot speak a word to her. Frustrated and confused by his silence, the princess gives up and walks away, leaving Tim feeling helpless. When his time in the magical world once again comes to an end, Tim is pulled back to the real world. This time, however, he returns to devastating news. Sophie has been expelled from music school. Breaking the rules by entering Tim's room had severe consequences, and she was punished for her actions. Desperate to fix things, Tim rushes to find Sophie. However, when he finally meets her, Sophie is angry and refuses to speak with him. She feels betrayed and hurt, believing that Tim's secretive behavior and inability to explain himself caused all of this.
I'm leaving.
Tim tries to plead with her, telling her that there's something much bigger at stake. He insists that he must finish the story in the magical world because it's the only way they can truly have a future together. But Sophie, knowing nothing of the magical world or Tim's role in it, doesn't believe him. She dismisses his explanations, feeling that he's only making excuses. After feeling isolated and burdened by his secret, Tim finally confides in his roommate, sharing everything: how he's been trapped in the magical world, the truth about the magic flute, and his role in saving the princess. However, his roommate, like Sophie, doesn't believe him, dismissing the story as pure fantasy. Frustrated but undeterred, Tim resolves to return to the magical world and finish what he started. Once back in the magical realm, Tim discovers the full extent of the queen's dark plans. Her goal wasn't just to kill the king, it was to destroy everything, plunging the kingdom into chaos and erasing the king's rule.
Is it too late?
The queen had been using powerful black magic to corrupt the realm, and only Tim, the prince of this story, and the queen's daughter could undo the damage. Tim reunites with the princess and works alongside her to find a solution. Together, they discover a path leading into a fiery, dangerous underground area. The heat is unbearable, flames erupting all around them. Tim, realizing that the magic flute holds the key, begins to play it. Its melody fills the air, and the magic within it creates an escape route, but not before the ground gives way beneath them, sending them both plunging into the water below. Tim uses the magic flute one final time, unleashing its full power. The queen's dark magic begins to unravel, and the corruption consuming the kingdom fades away. With the queen defeated, her black magic is broken, and balance is restored to the king's city. The kingdom celebrates its freedom, and the princess, finally safe, is restored to her rightful place as the queen's daughter, ready to help rebuild their world.
We did it.
With the story now complete, Tim says his goodbyes to the magical world and the friends he's made. The princess kissed him, grateful for his courage and sacrifice, and then they sent him back to the real world. This time he appeared in his room. Paolo realized what he told him was true. Tim ran to make things right with Sophie. Realizing she wasn't in her dorm, Tim runs to the train station. Just as he begins to lose hope, he sees her standing there. Overcome with relief, Tim rushes to her. They went back to attend a show, but Tim was called to the back room. Anton gave Tim his role and Tim started performing. Tim's journey teaches us the importance of courage, trust, and resilience in overcoming life's challenges. By believing in himself and embracing his role, Tim saves not only a magical world, but also repairs the bonds of love and friendship in his own. His story reminds us that with determination, we can face any darkness, bring light to those around us, and find strength in both imagination and reality. It shows that true victory lies in balancing the worlds of duty, love, and self-belief.